Alright, I'm here with Bill Woods, EMT Crew Chief, Field Training Officer for Medic of Mecklenburg County EMS. We're here to talk about 21st century terrorism and his personal experience with it. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Do you remember where you were on 9/11?
I absolutely do. I was actually I wasn't in EMS at the time. I had previously been in EMS earlier in my career. Had gotten out for a period of time, but I was actually here in Charlotte at home and preparing to go to work. I actually was in real estate at the time, and was watching live on TV as the attacks occurred.
Wow. So, how has terrorism affected your life, or not just your medical life, but your personal life?
Well, I know the day of the attacks, both of my boys were in school, and I can remember my wife wanting to go get them immediately and pull them out of school, because obviously nobody really knew to what extent we were being attacked, what was happening. And so I think starting from that day forward, it just showed the vulnerability of what terrorists can do, and do it here at home, and not just what we see in the news overseas or in another country. It hit close to home, and I think it changed everybody's life.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to go through. Is terrorism an important aspect in your life?
I think from a personal standpoint, you don't think about it every day. In my profession, you tend to think about it more. As somebody like yourself, young man in school, I don't know how much it weighs in. Earlier on, I think right after the attacks, you were more attuned to it, and I think that depending on what's being shown in the news, I think has a bearing. But from me, from being in emergency medical services, we are always aware of it, what's going on, particularly being in Charlotte. And Charlotte being the #2 financial center in the United States. So obviously we are a potential target at any time. So that obviously is always in our forefront of thinking.
What kind of training did Medic put you through for the Democratic National Convention that was in town?
I knew that question was going to come up. I won't go into great specifics for obvious security reasons. After the fact, we can talk a little bit more about it. It was so far-reaching beyond anything, even at my level. The administrative level has been working on this in excess of a year prior to. They had to coordinate efforts with multi-jurisdictional agencies, FBI, CIA, Secret Service, multiple police forces in and around the area, not to mention Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police. So huge coordination effort from that standpoint. We actually started in-service training, which is a monthly training that we receive as field medics. We started receiving 4 months in advance. Excuse me. We covered different aspects of what we could expect with a potential terrorist attack. Anything from biological weapons to improvised explosive devices, things of that nature, potential targets. We talked about treatment of what happens with these things, because we treat mass casualties on a more routine basis, car wrecks, bus wrecks, things like that, but in the event a bomb goes off in a major structure or God forbid something were to happen and in the stadium, if they had some attack there. So we had contingency plans in place for all of that. In addition to those plans, we had multiple levels of security set up, and within each level of security we had X amount of personnel, both field personnel, logistics, law enforcement, supervisors. I mean, it was huge detailing going into the preparations for that.
Yeah. Can you go into any detail about what the training consisted of, or is that kind of like...
No, we actually, like I said, classroom training. We had extensive classroom training on the effects of different gases that might be used in biological weapons. We had extensive training on, you think we handle trauma every day, but we go back over a lot of the basics. What do we do in traumatic events and things like that? We actually ramped up different levels of how we actually were deployed in the city. We had medics on foot. We had medics on mountain bikes. We had medics in ATVs. We had medics that were in quick response vehicles. We had, I mean, it was just, the training was across the board in how to coordinate all of the resources that would then intermix with each other. So that was a huge part of it.
When the time does come, how are you and your crew alerted for some sort of like increased level of possible terrorism?
That comes from administration down. And we have, like I said, once a month we have our regular in-service training. If there's something that's not critical, then that is brought up in our monthly training. If it's something that's critical, then it would filter down through our chain of command. It would come from my direct supervisor as to what our deployment action would be at that time.
Gotcha. How has Medic changed your personal view on the acts of terrorism in the 21st century?
Well, like I say, just being in EMS, I'm more aware of things that can happen. The people, the inhumanity to man is something that, you know, the average citizen doesn't think about every day. I see it in the streets. Then when you multiply that by the radical terrorists that could potentially attack, you know, it's something that you always have to, you know, to be aware of. Can't say that you want to live in fear of it, but always be aware of it, respect it, understand that it is a possibility, because it has happened, and there's nothing to keep them from attempting again. We're better prepared. Fire, police, medic, all of the public service here in Charlotte has taken from the DNC and learned a lot about how to work through interagency cooperation. We acquired a lot of equipment and training and things that we can move forward with, and it has better prepared us not only for a large terrorist attack, but just taking care of business from day-to-day aspect as well. So actually, because of terrorism, we are really a lot better prepared to handle day-to-day emergencies and tragedies just because of the additional training that we receive.
What, if anything, do you see Medic improving on in reference to acts of terrorism?
I think we're already seeing it. Last night I had my monthly in-service training, and we have really put a focus on education, on preparation, and being in front of rather than reacting to a situation. So again, I think that that's all in response to 9/11. That not just Medic, but I think law enforcement and government in general has a completely different view on what we need to do on a daily basis to be prepared and not be caught, you know, looking the other way. And so if you can take anything positive out of it, that's what I would say, is that I think as a whole, the nation, but certainly here within Charlotte, you know, we're well prepared for any tragedies, emergencies that might arise.
All right. So I just want to thank you again for your time.
Sure.
This is Bill Woods. He's an EMT with Medic, Mecklenburg County Emergency Systems. He's a crew chief, I think, is what he said.
Right. Crew chief.
So, thank you again for your
You're
time.
welcome. Very much. Thank you.
I'm here with Todd Passons. He's a Charlotte firefighter. What's your rank with the
Firefighter 2.
Firefighter 2. We're gonna go get started. Do you remember where you were on 9/11, and were you at all like alerted?
Yeah, we were, actually I was on duty at Charlotte. We were returned from a call and happened to stop in a business, and walked inside, and they had it on TV that, you know, a plane had hit the World Trade Center, and we didn't really think much about it at the time, but you know, as minutes progressed and then another plane hit, we started to realize that, you know, something wasn't right. And before we got back to the station, they had already alerted all the stations to go back to their assigned station and keep the stations on lockdown. You know, so they pretty much had some type of idea what was going on, because they put us on alert. Like I said, put all the stations on lockdown, wouldn't let any visitors come by or anything until they found out what was going on.
How has terrorism affected you in not only your professional life, but your personal life?
Well, in professional life, of course, you know, it's affected me, you know, through work. You know, as far as you try to be on the lookout for more things that just aren't supposed to be there. You know, it's like I said, a lot more training, situational awareness. You know, it used to be you could, in our professional, you know, it used to be where you really wouldn't have to worry about these things when you were out in public. As far as, you know, you could leave a fire truck by itself, you know, leave things unlocked, and now it's where we are not supposed to leave the fire trucks by itself out in the parking lot. You know, try to lock all your personal vehicles for being a volunteer firefighter, because, you know, people try to get, you know, whether it's your turnout gear that we do wear to try to kind of represent a firefighter trying to, maybe a terrorist trying to get in somewhere that they would normally let a firefighter get through. But, you know, and they're a lot more strict with that. Just because you're a firefighter now doesn't mean, you know, you can even get to most places. For example, you know, out at the airport, you know, if you're working out there and you're not assigned to one of those airport stations and you don't have the security clearance to get through those areas, just because you're a firefighter, they're not going to let you in, you know.
I understand that y'all had to go through some training for the Democratic National Convention that was in town.
Mm-hmm.
Was it mainly classroom training, or was it like hands-on, like just?
Most of it was classroom training. We did go through some, you know, gas mask training, which in turn went onto the trucks. The gas masks that we didn't have on there before, but for the DNC we did have to go through that training, which they did put them on the trucks, as well as they got new monitors, different gas monitors that we had to go through a hands-on training with that, as well as you know, new radio system, new radios that we had to go through some type of training that. But it was more or less, you know, kind of different things to look for. Now, if you did sign up for the DNC, there was specialized teams that, you know, to handle protesters, how to cut protesters out of different barricaded stuff that to keep you from harming them, so they wouldn't try to do anything to the city. So, you know, so I would say about half and half. Half of it was classroom and half of it was hands-on.
Gotcha.
So,
how are you and your crew alerted in the act of an increased terror level or threat?
mostly through our battalion chief, which is a battalion chief's assigned to a number of stations in his battalion. We get different memos like that, or he'll have meetings uptown with the upper management, you know, what's going on. We also get emails through city emails, which are, like I said, some of them are, most of, anything that important is blocked through the city, which in turn, you know, we had to sign a waiver saying that we would not discuss things, anything to do with the DNC or our practices or way we respond to different situations. So it's pretty tight how they let us know what's going on, but they get it out to us. So,
how has like your involvement in the fire department changed any views on terrorism that you may have already had?
I don't think it's really changed. I mean, it makes you, like I said, situational awareness. It really makes you look at things different. You know, look at things twice as to something you would not normally look at. You know, say it's a package that's just sitting there. As years before, you'd probably say, well, that's just a package. Well, now you have to treat that as maybe a suspicious package. Look at how things are. Where is it? Is it in front of a post office, or is it in front of a federal building or anything like that? You just look at things different than you did years ago.
What, if anything, do you see the fire department improving or changing in reference to how they respond with terrorism?
I think Charlotte's done a real good job of responding to terrorism. We've got probably some of the top people who's really worked with the federal government and got in really tight with those, and got a lot of educated people up there that's worked with the federal government. Hope for the best and prepare for the worst, you know. So, and that's what we did, but everything worked out great. We didn't have many problems at all.
All right. I just want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, anytime.
This is Todd Passon, Charlotte Fire Department. He's a class